Dr. Stanley Lang, and welcome to this broadcast. I have a question for you, and the question is, why should we heal or manage stress? What's the reason, the big reason that we should try or make an effort to heal our stress or to manage it? So, stress management is the phrase that is used to describe the whole series of things that we do to try to heal stress. But why should we do that? Well, one of the main reasons is that chronic stress is one of the biggest contributors to almost all of the diseases that we experience. It's also one of the biggest causes of people getting overweight and staying overweight and having trouble losing that weight. So there are a lot of reasons to try to heal your stress. In previous podcasts and broadcasts, I have talked about chronic stress being caused by the gap between your expectation and your reality, and focusing on that gap. So if I have this big gap between where I am and where I want to be, but I'm not focused on it, it's not nearly as stressful as if I'm really focused on it all the time. Sometimes we can't avoid that, being in that focused on that gap. And for the purposes of these next few broadcasts, I'm still assuming that we really can't do anything about this gap. We're kind of stuck with it. So what can we do to help deal with the chronic stress response, that chemical change that is going on in our body that's slowly or even quickly causing a lot of damage? So the approach that I've been recommending is what I call a whole person health approach. That means taking advantage of the fact that you've got resources, physical, emotional, and spiritual, that can help you to deal with this chronic stress in a way that it doesn't eat you up, that it doesn't cause you to get sick. Today we're focusing on the physical aspect of this whole person approach, and I'm focusing on what I call, or what many call, the glycemic index. And the glycemic index is a phrase that describes how fast the blood sugar rises after you eat particular carbohydrates. So the glycemic index is a calculation that has been done by a lab that measures how fast the blood sugar rises for a certain size of carbohydrate meal. And if it rises quickly, we say that it has a high glycemic index. If it rises slowly, a low glycemic index. Now, one of the problems with glycemic index research is that in the early 90s, there was very few places in the world that did this research, and the University of Sydney in Australia was really the gold standard in terms of producing data that you could look at and trust. And now there's a lot of different places that do this research, and unfortunately they don't get the same numbers. They're not quite as rigorous in their methodology as the University of Sydney was and still is about the data that they published decades ago now. So sometimes when you look at glycemic index data, it doesn't match up. Like in one place it might say that apples are low glycemic or mid glycemic, and other places it might describe them as higher glycemic. So I want to explain a little bit about glycemic index, but I don't want to go into big detail because the details can get confusing. So basically, carbohydrates are chains of sugar molecules, and our body can either break those sugar molecules up slowly or very quickly, or in some cases not at all. For instance, if you chew on a tree, you're not going to break those sugar molecules that are in those carbohydrates up at all, because you don't have the enzymes to break it up. But if you eat many different vegetables that are part of our diet, your body can break up those chains of sugar molecules, but it does it very slowly. On the other hand, if you have a baked potato and you eat it hot, the chains of sugar molecules in that food have been broken up very well by the cooking, and your body will turn that baked potato into sugar very, very quickly, faster than it would even a tablespoon of sugar. So the blood sugar rises quickly after you eat this baked potato, and so we call that a high glycemic response to this food. So what's this got to do with stress? Well, when you eat high glycemic foods, you get a peak in the blood sugar. So on this graph, we're going to we're going to say that the blood sugar is this dotted line that goes up rapidly and comes down rapidly. And this other graph is the insulin response to that blood sugar. So the body pumps out a lot of insulin quickly when the blood sugar rises rapidly. So it does that because one of the things that the body has as its sort of prime directive is to keep certain chemicals in a very tight range, and blood sugar is one of them. So when the blood sugar rises quickly, the insulin is pumped out a lot, and it's pumped out quickly. And in general, there's an overshooting of the target, and then the blood sugar starts to drop rapidly. Now, when the blood sugar drops rapidly, that produces a stress response in the body. And in addition to feeling fatigued and sleepy and tired, there are some chemical changes in the body that are like the chronic stress response, and it aggravates the chronic stress response that's gone in our body. So if you want to be able to decrease the effects of chronic stress in your body, one of the things you want to control is how fast the blood sugar rises after a meal. Now, glycemic index refers to carbohydrates. It doesn't refer to proteins and fats because those are broken down much more slowly to chemicals that our body can use as fuel, and so we don't even pay attention to that as an effect on the immediate energy changes inside of our bloodstream. So glycemic index refers to carbohydrates. Basically, the vegetables are in the low glycemic category. The fruits, most of the fruits are in the mid glycemic region, and most of the grains, even the whole grains, are in the high glycemic category. And then white rice, white potatoes are very high glycemic. So if you want to help to decrease chronic stress, then you want to stop this blood sugar change where the blood sugar shoots up quickly and drops back down quickly. That means that you're going to create meals where high glycemic foods represent a very tiny part or no part at all in the meal. And you have a rich amount of protein, a rich amount of fat, and then a rich amount of low glycemic carbs, but a very small amount of high glycemic carbs. That kind of a meal decreases chronic stress in your body because of stopping a chemical process that aggravates chronic stress. So one of the most powerful things that you can do to decrease the stress in your body, the chronic stress response, is to eat low glycemic. Now, I've just touched very superficially on this subject. There's a whole lot more that has been written and could be talked about, but the point being, if you want to decrease stress, if you want to decrease your perception of stress, eat low glycemic. And if you eat low glycemic, not only will you be healthy for a lot of other reasons, but your stress level, both your perceived stress level and the measured stress level, will decrease. So I encourage you to adopt this kind of a strategy to decrease the stress in your life and in your body. And I encourage you to share this kind of a message with friends and family so that they also can benefit from having less of the damage of stress going on in their lives. I wish you well, God bless, and have a great day.